now in the last few years is a curriculum that I helped to write called Helping Without Hurting in Africa. And it's based on the principles from the book When Helping Hurts. And the author, Brian Fickert, worked with me and Johnny Kabiswa, who you saw, to write this curriculum for African leaders and also foreigners like Americans who are working in Africa to help. How do we do community development wisely? How do we care for the poor wisely? And there's a lot more I could say, but you can look at the book out on the table. So that's taking my time. My trainings are usually either with NGOs, the staff of NGOs, or with church leaders and pastors. Over the past few years, I've traveled a lot. I spent a lot of time getting sick, traveling around different countries. Those are the countries that we've done trainings in so far together. This is one of our other facilitators. We also train other facilitators who we can recommend to other organizations who also invite us for this training because we can't do all of them ourselves. We raised money some few years ago for French and Swahili translations of our book so that it can be used in West Africa and East Africa more with these languages. And I'm happy to announce that any day now, those new books will be out. And hopefully many more people will take up the training and lead it themselves, even without us coming to visit. You can go to the next slide. This is Johnny. So he's a Ugandan, but he lives in Kenya right now. And we work hand in hand to facilitate this training in different countries. And we also have about 20 other facilitators that we work with sometimes, so we don't always go together. I'll just share with you one story, a recent story about this training that really excited me. We were invited by an organization called Every Child Ministries. It's an American organization. And they have work in a few countries in Africa. And we were able to train with them in Uganda and also Ghana. And this is their staff, both their North American staff members and their Ugandan staff members. And this organization sponsors children, or child sponsorship. And when they went through the training with us, it transformed the mindsets of the staff members to think about how can we do our work better. And with child sponsorship, there's a lot of problems that can come up. One of those problems is that you can kind of create a sense of dependency on the organization by the parents of these vulnerable children, where they'll even start to say, this is the child of Every Child Ministries, rather than my child, and they expect the organization to do everything for them. I'm just talking about a general thing with organizations that sponsor children. So after this training, the organization said, we need to change our approach. Instead of just sponsoring children, we need to be empowering parents and empowering families. And so now, rather than simply taking money from here to bring these children to school, now they're trying to support the parents of these vulnerable children with parenting skills, with job skills, and a number of things. And they're also asking the parents to rise up to their responsibility of contributing to care for their children as well. And so the organization is still giving a lot, but they're also asking the parents to contribute what they're able, and it's making it a much more healthy situation. And even some of the parents were having shame, kind of like the children were treating the parents differently because they knew it's the organization caring for me, not you. And so there's been a big change of mindset and relationship among the parents and children and the organization. Before, the organization would always have to go to the homes to say, it's time for your children to go to school. And now the parents are bringing their children to school. And so I'm really excited that an organization like this would have the humility to invite us in and basically critique what they're doing and discuss together and actually change their programming and how they do their work. So my work is different from what it used to be. I used to teach pastors in different areas, and I still do that a little bit, but now I'm working more with organizations on these approaches to caring for the poor.
All right, so the majority of my work is working with farmers, and the way that I do that is I'll be invited by a church or a pastor that we know, and they'll start up a group interested in learning together. And we meet once or twice a month, depending on their schedule, and we'll do a Bible study together, which is a discussion-based Bible study that has an action plan at the end where everybody has to say something they're going to do based on what they learned from Scripture. And then I'll do an agriculture lesson, and I try to focus on simple things that can be done with what people have already instead of having to invest a lot of money in it. And then they can use those skills to improve what they have so that they don't need to spend as much money. And then that leaves their income available for other things. And so in this one picture, you can see one of our lessons was learning how to trim goat and sheep feet, which a lot of people had no idea that that was something that you could do. You might not have any idea that that's something you can do, but if you don't, their hooves get like really long and kind of curled, and they can get infections. And so it was a fun activity for everybody, and they're like, wow, I've never done this before, and now I know it's important to take care of my goats and sheep. So with the action planning, often the action plans relate to farming because that's the livelihood of these people, and it's the most obvious application of what they're reading in God's Word. But sometimes I'm surprised at the action plans that people make and the way that they're applying God's Word. One of the ladies in a recent group that I was facilitating, her action plan that was most meaningful to her out of the whole year of trainings that we did, she gave this testimony, was that we were talking about how it's important to understand how people are feeling and why they're behaving the way that they are. And so her action plan had been that she wasn't just going to beat children whenever they annoyed her, she was going to talk to them and find out why they were behaving the way that they were. And I was like, well, that's not what I was expecting as an application from that passage, but she said it just transformed her life, and so now she's a different person in the way that she interacts with children. And then I want to share with you specifically, Brookfield gave a big gift to my ministry a couple years ago through Operation Grow that has allowed me to take farmers for learning visits, either to the farms of other local Ugandan farmers, or in this case, to a farm in central Uganda in Jinja, where it's a teaching farm. And it gives them an opportunity to be able to learn from someone else and get new ideas and new skills that they can use back at their home. And so this is a group of farmers learning about grafting oranges. So this lady is showing them practically how they can graft an orange into a lemon tree. And just briefly, one other fun thing that I do sometimes is skills training, such as baking a cake without an oven, because pretty much no one has an oven, and cakes are fun. And so it's always an activity that people love, is to learn how to make their own cake at home.
I travel a lot, but I try to stay engaged also locally, and one of the ways that I do that is through our radio program that Resonate Global Mission. We fundraise to run the program. I'm not the only teacher. We have a number of reverends that do the program as well, so I'm not teaching quite every week, maybe once a month on average. And I've been teaching through the whole book of 1 Corinthians, and that is a delight to me to have the challenge to go through every chapter, even the difficult ones. And so it's a really rewarding program, and we have between 500,000 and 1 million listeners. So it's it's like the main radio station for our region, the government radio station. And so there's a lot of listeners.
And just as a side note, Uganda is not a big country. It's about the size of the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, and it's over 50 million people population. So when you hear 1 million people, that's a lot, but it's also a small percentage of the population of Uganda. Whenever I'm doing my agricultural work, I incorporate nutrition, and 2 of the plants that I encourage people to grow, and I've been helping in getting either seeds or cuttings, are chaya and moringa. And they're 2 of the most nutritious greens in the world, and they're very easy for people to adopt into their diet because they grow and they're green throughout the year, even during the dry season, and it tastes similar to things that people are already used to eating. So these are some of my most successful introductions into Uganda, and people have been even sharing with their neighbors beyond what I have shared with them.
Hope you're not getting whiplash as we jump back and forth. Another thing that I do locally, which is not a huge time commitment, is there's a group of pastors that we have a book club together. It's up to about 43 of us now from different denominations, and we get books that are donated from Crossway or Christian Book, and we read them together, and then once a month come together to discuss and talk about how to apply what we have learned in those chapters. And also this group of pastors sometimes will help me. We work together to plan theological conferences. And actually, I can mention it now, Lee and Megan are coming to, and their children are coming to Uganda next year. And Lee is going to be teaching a theological conference for maybe 4 days. And then Megan, who is in the medical field, she's going to be volunteering with a hospital in Soroti. So let me quickly put in a plug for them. They are going to be fundraising for this trip. So they may be communicating with you later about that. So we would feel supported ourselves if you would also help to get them there, because having family visit is a huge, huge encouragement to be able to share our lives with them. So that's a quick plug. And then another thing, that's one of the conferences we did last year on the book of Galatians. You can go on. And then we also have a bishops group, which we only meet like once every 3 months. But Sara and I together meet with a group of bishops and their wives from our region. And it's kind of like to give them a little bit of a retreat. Being a bishop in Uganda is incredibly demanding. They have people calling them constantly. And who cares for the bishop? Who cares for the bishop's wife? And so we're trying to, with our colleague Stephen, trying to care for them, give them some teaching, discussions, retreats. And we raised money for 2 marriage conferences, marriage retreats, one for that group of pastors and one for the bishops and their wives. And some of the churches and individuals gave to support those 2 conferences. And so we did those last fall and just went wonderfully. For some of them, it was the first time. For some of the bishops' wives, it was the first time that they were ever able to go to an event with their husband and not have him be the one running it, and actually working on their own marriages. So if any of you gave to that, we are so grateful, and those were a big success.
So you might remember the last time that we came, I shared about Bible studies that I did with youth during the time of COVID, because schools were closed for 2 years in Uganda and kids were just at home. And so I helped to facilitate Bible studies with youth. And many of those kids have now become like over 20 years old and are in college. And I've been able to keep in touch with them and still do some mentoring. And I also brought some of them during their school holidays to my other farmer trainings, and they were able to help me with that. They assisted in leading the Bible studies because they had that experience from earlier, a few years ago. And then I've also started doing art classes for kids during their school holidays because I like art and they don't really get art class in school. And so this one we did self-portraits and talked about how we're sons and daughters of the king. But I'm really amused by how their self-portraits turned out. Some of them apparently think that they're green, but they were so proud of their drawings, and it was really cute.
Those art classes are one way that we're trying to reach our neighbors and community. So it's a real blessing that Sarah's able to do that, to build those relationships with people. One of the things that I started doing only in the past few months is teaching about technology and AI from a biblical perspective. And I just had a burden because I started seeing pastors using AI to create instant sermons. I even had people using AI to write me personal WhatsApp messages, personal text messages. Is all of a sudden just a big explosion of misuse of AI and all kinds of other technology issues with smartphone addiction, pornography addiction, and many times the parents have no idea what their youth are doing, because you go from having no phone, no internet, to all of a sudden having a smartphone, the internet, AI that's free, and all of this, and the parents may have never used a smartphone in their lives. So they have no idea what their kids are getting into. And it's just a huge issue for the churches. There's fake news issues. We know children who don't sleep at night because they sneak out and get the phone and they're on it all night long. It's just addiction, and people don't know how to deal with it. So I had this burden to create this teaching, and I've taught it about 5 times in the past few months. Sometimes it was just a small group of youth. Other times it was like 160 church leaders together. And I'm still kind of revising it and developing it and doing more research. It's not my favorite thing to teach about, but it's like I felt I had to teach about it because there's just so much confusion going on, and it's opened up a lot of really good discussions where now the parents and the pastors are discussing these issues, and we're all learning together. And so you can pray as I keep working on that.
So another thing that I do is working with my friend Jane, who you can see in that picture, doing kind of informal counseling trainings to help people in the church know how they can care for each other well and improve relationships between husbands and wives and parents and children and neighbors with each other. And Jane and I have been invited to different churches to help share either with couples or with women or with parents and talk to them about some of the relationship skills that they can grow in. And one of the churches we've been invited back to several times, and we heard a testimony from one of the men who had been there the previous time, and he said that his wife and his kids didn't really like him. And then after our training, he realized he should be spending more time with them. So he started coming home early in the evening and playing with his kids and bringing them little treats when he came home from town. And he was like, no, they like it when I come home, and my kids enjoy being with me. And my wife and I just had another baby, and we prayed for the baby the whole time before she gave birth. And now here's the baby that we had since the last time you saw us. And so we were really encouraged to see how he put those really simple relational skills into practice to improve his family life.
Just something I do on the side for my enjoyment, but I think it's also a good thing, is my podcast, Meet an African Pastor podcast. And now that I have connections with pastors around the continent, I can get different pastors from different countries. So if you're interested, you can look that up on Google and have a listen and learn about churches in Africa and the lives of pastors there.
Okay, now we're just going to give you a quick overview of some aspects of our life in Uganda so you can see how it's similar and different to here. This is a parking lot at a funeral, actually. But you can see a lot of people are driving motorcycles, very few people are driving cars. And so the trees are always the parking lot for the motorcycles and the bicycles. And this is the church that we go to in town, the one that starts at 6:40 in the morning. And Anthony sometimes preaches there. So it's a town church, very big, and there's a wing going back this way. Yeah, and they have like 800 people on a Sunday? Something like that, 2 services. And then sometimes we go to village churches, and this is what we're not going to make you do in our little session here, but lots of dancing and jumping, and you can see it's dusty in there, so the jumping has just brought all the dust out. Then a big change in our lives that has made our lives so much easier in the last few years is getting solar panels. And the electricity in Uganda is not reliable, and especially where we are living. And so we've been incredibly blessed by having solar, so that now our power never goes out. We don't have to worry about like our phone dying during the night while we're charging it, or getting cut off in the middle of a Zoom meeting with someone, because our power just stays on all the time. Then one fun thing about living in Uganda is chameleons. We found these in our garden, even a baby one, which was really exciting to me. So we just get great joy out of enjoying God's creation and the fun creatures that live there that don't live in the U.S. Then there's also unusual food. This is not what people normally eat, but there are some queen termites there, which are about the size of your finger, like that, very fat, and people will roast them and eat them, and it's a special treat for some people. But some Ugandans are also like, that's really gross, I don't want to eat it. We have not eaten that. Anthony does not like worms and grubs, so I don't know if he could even handle it if he wanted to. And then that's Paul, who works for us, and he's roasting, it looks like a giant rat, but it's not like a sewer rat. It's a wild rodent that would be more like eating a rabbit. But we have eaten that. It's like rabbit. It's not as scary.
For fun, now that we own our own home there, we dug a fish pond. We dug and made a fish pond, and there's tilapia in it and catfish. And here's one of the catfish. And I like fishing, and we like eating fish. So it's just more of a fun thing. But I've also been able to share with some of the people in our community about how to do fish ponds. Yep. And there was a monitor lizard that got near the pond, and it was eating the fish, and Sarah was worried it would eat our chicks also, because we have ducks and chickens. So I made a trap by following a video on YouTube, making a simple trap out of a PVC pipe and making kind of a snare, a noose, and it worked, and we caught it. There's still a small one, but they can get really big. So we got rid of it before it got too big.
Yeah, not quite Komodo dragon, but still kind of scary. Then I've also gotten great joy out of painting murals because, again, I never owned a house or a place to paint things on. And so that's been a lot of fun. And I use the technique that I use for teaching kids how to take a picture and then transfer it into a painting by drawing a grid, and then you copy like what's inside each square. And so it makes it easy to take a small thing and then make it big but be proportional. So that's something I enjoy. That's my South Dakota painting on the right with South Dakota things. That's where my parents are from. This is most of my garden. The wall that you can see is the edge of our property, and I won't bore you by listing all of the things that I'm growing, but there are over 40 different things. But I have peanuts and sweet potatoes and the different greens that I teach people about, the chaya, moringa, and then this is a cashew nut tree, and that is how cashews grow, on the bottom of a fruit. And when they're ready, they just fall off of the tree, and you have to burn the cashew in fire to get rid of the oil that can be like an allergic thing to people, and then you break it open and the nut is inside. So that was a really fun experience for me too. There were 10 on the first fruits of the tree. There were 10 of them, and it was really exciting to have 10 cashews.
One of the not fun things is repairing our vehicle all the time, flat tires and other issues that come up. One time, this was pretty recently, I was in another city, I was teaching, I was staying at a guest house, and it was like 5 a.m., I was hearing this horn keep going off, I got really annoyed. I finally opened the door to figure out what was going on and realized it's my vehicle at the guest house that's going off and waking everyone up at 5 a.m., and couldn't figure out how to get it to stop, and finally had to disconnect the battery and then spent 2 days with people trying to figure out the wiring issue. And yeah, this is just an introduction to say that we are now fundraising for a new vehicle, a new used vehicle. This vehicle has served us well. It's a 2001 Land Cruiser, but it's just now getting to the point where there's repairs all the time, and that takes away from ministry time as well as being expensive. And we don't know exactly what the new vehicle will cost because we don't have one picked out yet. But we need something very strong for the roads that are there. Sara goes on roads sometimes that are like the size of a footpath, and you're just going over bushes. So we're fundraising $60,000 for a vehicle, and we would ask you to consider whether you might be able to, as a church, give something towards the vehicle cost or as an individual. And we have a sign-up sheet. Is it back at the table? Back at the table, where if you want to get an email from us about the vehicle information, you can just put your email address there. We don't have something for you to take. You just put your information there, and we'll email you the information about how to give. And then as a church, we'll leave you to think about that and to discuss that together. And we're going to be asking all of the churches that we are visiting, so that we hope between everyone we will be able to raise enough for that.
Yeah, so just to review, what things can you do to keep in touch with us and to support us? One, we thank you that you are supporting us financially, and we hope that you will continue to do so. And then, like Anthony mentioned, we're raising support for a vehicle. You can pray for us. We have the prayer cards out there on the table, and I'm going to share the same prayer requests here. And then you can also send us emails. You can even send us letters. We have a post office box in Uganda. Unfortunately, at the moment, I couldn't send you a letter back. I would send you real mail, but there have been weird things with the tariffs on mail, and so Uganda hasn't figured out yet how much to charge for a letter to the U.S., and so they're just not sending any mail to the U.S. right now. Yeah, the prayer cards are for you to take home. So, prayer requests. One, you heard a little bit about our community in Anthony's sermon, and there's kind of a culture of drinking local alcohol within our whole region. And so when people become Christians, one of the biggest things is giving up drinking completely. And so in our community, there are a lot of people who are still in that culture of just drinking and wasting their money and their lives. And so pray for us and for our pastor friends as we try to care for such people, share our knowledge, and help bring them out of that addiction and to Christ. And then also pray for safety. As you heard, Anthony's been traveling a lot internationally, and I drive around a lot to rural places to visit farmers, so pray for our safety on the roads and good health from sickness. And then another challenge that we face is that we get many, many invitations from people to do work, and everybody has limits. And it's hard to say no when we have a relationship with someone and we know we can help and we can go and teach, but we don't have enough time or energy. So just pray for humility for us to know our limits and wisdom to know what we should say yes to and prioritize as we're doing our work. So I think we have 6 minutes for questions. If you have any questions about anything that you want to ask us.
There's a lot of persecution of Christians in Uganda. Is that true, or that's not?
You want to say something?
Yeah, I come across articles also about that. It's strange to me because when we're there, it feels like there's zero persecution, and the majority of the country is Christian in name. But there are these pockets of Islam where if someone becomes a Christian, their family can really attack them. And there was something just in far northwest Uganda where maybe some homes were burned, also maybe some kind of skirmish between the Christian community and the Muslim community in that area. But I would say it's a small thing in Uganda. It's a very, very free country, very supportive of Christianity. Christianity's been there for over 100 years. But those scattered Muslim families, and then maybe some traditional religions too, where you might have some skirmishes with the local witch doctor, something like that.
Yeah, I would say that there's not a lot of real animosity between people of different tribes, but there tends to be favoritism that if you have a job, you would want to give it to somebody of your tribe and not to someone else. And so there's that kind of division where people are prioritizing their own tribe rather than other people around them. It's okay.
So, a long time ago, I read a book called Peace Child by Dr. Richardson, and there were cultural clues with people he ministered to that helped with the sharing of the gospel. Is that true with God? Are there certain cultural clues, or do you just give the gospel?
Okay, well. Okay. Most people have heard that, at least generally, the gospel, because it's like 85% of people in Uganda would call themselves Christians. But there is a lot of cultural Christianity, just like in the U.S., where people go to church just every once in a while, or they say they're a Christian because they're not a Muslim. But this is not exactly what you're asking, but I see with farmers, they're able to understand things in the Bible that just, go over our heads because we're not working in the fields or having animals, like in the Old Testament where it says what to do if your animal eats your neighbor's garden. We're like, well, that doesn't apply to us because we don't have animals eating our neighbor's garden. But that's a huge deal in Uganda. It happens all the time. People will just release their animals and they'll go into their neighbor's garden and destroy everything. So those kinds of things are easily understandable within the culture. They can read Jesus's parables and just picture it in their minds because it's the same kind of thing they're experiencing.
Maybe one part would be belief in God was there already before Christianity came, especially belief in a supreme being, a supreme God who's the creator. But that makes it so it's easy for Africans to believe in God, unlike in the West. Everyone believes in God, even if they're not a Christian. But it's also challenging because it has led to a lot of syncretism. Because the idea of the supreme being in traditional African culture is a different view of God than our view of God. It's a God that's kind of distant, and you need these intermediary beings, intermediary gods and rituals and in the Christian faith, we believe that God has come to us, right? And we don't need the man of God in order to relate. Like they need the witch doctor to relate to God. And so the syncretism now, especially in prosperity gospel churches, you can't really relate to God very much on your own. You need the prophet, you need the apostle to really have the real prayers that will reach God where you... And so there's certain syncretistic problems that come out from the traditional culture into some of the Pentecostal churches and some of the prosperity gospel churches. So there's good and the bad. Except for those who want to stay, we don't have anywhere to go.
Well, we can do one last question, and then you will be here and you can ask your other questions to us individually.
It's kind of like Roman Catholic is number 1, then Anglican is number 2, and Pentecostal is number 3, but the Pentecostal is like 2,000 different or 3,000 different denominations of Pentecostal, but there's one really big Pentecostal denomination, the Pentecostal Assemblies of God, which is our main partner in Uganda as Resonate Global Mission. And we work with the Anglicans and others as well, but we work most closely with PAG, Pentecostal Assemblies of God, and they help us get our work permits, and we worship at Pentecostal churches in Soroti. Sometimes they wonder why we're not starting a Reformed church, but we're there to equip the churches that are there and help them to grow in their knowledge rather than spreading the dominion of the CRC in Uganda.